I always find, when you ask someone, especially in London, how they are, the majority of the time they answer with busy, or crazy busy, or good but busy but good. We've all done it, haven't we? And busy's become a badge of honour. We associate it with success, and running around like a headless chicken has become the new normal for a lot of us. And unfortunately, it's not doing our health any favours to be this way. More than half of all sick days from work are caused by stress, anxiety and depression. That's 15.4 million days a year in the UK. And it's not surprising that it's women that struggle with burnout the most. So today we're going to be discussing this with our amazing panel, and they're going to be sharing their own experiences and tips on things that we can all do to slow down and not burn out. So I'm going to introduce everyone. First we've got Lucy Sheridan, who is the comparison coach. Lucy is on a mission to help us all live comparison-free in our hyper-connected world. She also has her second book coming out in December, The Comparison Cure, which is really exciting. So can we get a round of applause for Lucy? Yeah. Next we've got Danielle Marchant. Danielle is a coach and author of books Pause, How to Press Pause Before Life Does It For You, and Pause Every Day. And she runs pause retreats in the UK and across the world to encourage guests to slow down, breathe and inwardly reflect. So yeah, can we get a round of applause for Danielle? And we've got the amazing Rosie Villan, aka Miss Nutritionist. Rosie is a nutritionist and a speaker, and she knows firsthand what it's like to experience burnout. And she works with women to help them to transform their energy through diet and lifestyle. So thanks for joining us, Rosie. And finally, we've got the brilliant Samantha Clark, who is a happiness consultant working with companies and individuals to make work happiness a priority for everyone. So, round of applause for Samantha. Okay, so we're going to start with Rosie. You talk very publicly about your experience of burnout. Can you tell us what your experience has been?
Yeah, so 5 years ago, I was walking in the park on a beautiful sunny day like this, and I suddenly felt really dizzy, and before I knew it, my knees went from underneath me and I collapsed to the ground. And I freaked out because nothing like that had ever happened to me before. So I went home, I basically climbed into a taxi, went home, climbed into bed, and I stayed there for 3 years straight. I couldn't move, I was completely paralysed with exhaustion. At my worst, I couldn't even lift my head off the pillow. I couldn't do small things like go to the loo, brush my teeth, have a shower. They were just very, very difficult things to do. So I thought I'd just sleep it off, and no amount of sleep was making me feel any better. So I did what anybody would do in that situation. I took myself off to the doctors and I asked them to run some bloods on me, and they said yes. But the results came back completely fine. There was nothing wrong with me. I was just depressed. So they handed me some antidepressants and I burst into tears because I was like, I'm not depressed. I'm exhausted. I've never ever experienced that level of exhaustion before. So I went home completely bewildered and frustrated and all on my own. And I realised that I had to heal myself. So I did loads and loads of reading, I did lots of tests on myself, and eventually everything was pointing to the same thing, and it was clear that I had severe burnout. So you're probably wondering what the hell I was doing before I collapsed, and I was basically working like a freight train, not eating properly, not sleeping properly. I said yes to everything, and I just thought I was Superwoman. And you get burnout when your plate is already full, but you keep on adding to it. So, there I was, saying yes to everything, and all my stresses were building. Something was the straw that broke the camel's back, and that was it. I was in bed. So long story short, I changed everything. I really had to change my diet, had to change my mindset and my lifestyle, and it took me 5 years to get back on my feet. And I'm 100% recovered today, which is great. I'm super happy to be here with you. I'm very energized now. But my message is really simple. It's burnout sucks. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I really wouldn't, because it's a very dark, lonely place to be. And that's why I do what I do. I get up on stage, I speak to people about how to be energized, how not to burn out, and how to be the best versions of themselves.
Thank you for sharing that, amazing. Danielle, you similarly suffered a burnout in 2011. Can you tell us about that?
I did, yes. Some similarities actually to your story. I was managing director of 2 companies. I was living in Singapore. I was flying every day. I used to work from 6 till 3, but that was 6 a.m. till 3 a.m. I just really didn't eat properly, as you were describing. I partied very hard. And eventually, not surprisingly, you can see where it's going. One day my body said that was enough, and I couldn't get out of bed. It was literally like my body was cemented to the mattress and I couldn't move. And I did what anybody would do at that point. I got somebody to bring my laptop and I carried on working. Which in hindsight obviously wasn't the smartest thing to do, but at the time it seemed to be completely natural. I just didn't correlate the fact that I couldn't move my body to the fact that I was burnt out. I hadn't added these things up in my mind. Eventually I returned from Singapore and I came to the UK, which actually was difficult. I couldn't really even get on a flight at that point, but I managed to get to the UK. And I spent 3 months in Cornwall in complete isolation, in complete retreat. So I didn't see anybody, I had no connection to people via phone, via email. I stopped working, I slept more than any person might ever understand that you could sleep. And I also, similarly to Rosie, reevaluated every aspect of my life during that time. From the bottom up, decided that I needed to eat differently, socialise differently, work differently, travel differently, exercise differently, everything had to be reevaluated. So whilst it sounds like quite a depressing story, actually for me it was one of the best things that ever happened in terms of radically changing the way that I live my life. But I wouldn't recommend you go to the extreme limits that I went to do that. You know, there are lots of other ways that we can transition in a smoother way and a less painful way with the support that's available to us from lots of amazing people.
Amazing, thank you for sharing that, and hopefully, you sharing your stories will mean that people don't reach that extreme kind of point. Lucy, I wanted to know, how much does FOMO and comparison culture play a part in so many young women burning out and experiencing stress and anxiety?
I think because we're in the midst of a bit of an epidemic at the moment, the influence is definitely growing, and I think part of that is because one of the things that comparison makes us feel is this need to strive and to reach, and then we start using language like take the bull by the horns and push and crush your goals. And even like, look at my body language, even that is quite constricting to say the sentence. So imagine kind of being that in that state, trying to go about your day, and then you've got to do the laundry, go to the meeting, pick up your kids, etc. It all kind of compounds there. And I think, of course, I mean, this is no bombshell, but we look at social media and we see other people's versions of success happening almost, like planes landing at Heathrow, one after the other every time. My phone's always one from scrolling. I'm just going to get that out of the way now. But if I'm looking there and I try to be present, I'm often present on social media, but there's always something, another announcement or another kind of like, don't mind me, just here. And it's so overwhelming. It's almost impossible to ignore what other people are doing. So we think about that in its relationship to burnout. It always says we're not doing enough, and with that holds hand with it, so I'm not being enough. And just like you kind of open the conversation with, it's this busy as a badge of honour, and it all makes us quite high pitched as well. It's like, fine, like busy, good, busy, and it all like we all go a little bit high pitched with it, and that's when it's like, whoa, like the red flag immediately goes up. But even that, having to brace yourself, like how that feels in our body, add that to a busy, I try and swap the word busy for vibrant as a bit of a reframe. But it's quite complex in its connection. So it's like pulling a bit of thread out of a ball of wool. When you actually start to kind of pull out, you can see clearly. But the things compound each other, and like I say, I think it's the idea of striving or doing or being enough in time as well. Well, they're younger than me, or they're here and they're there, and I'm not there, and we become very much have the feeling that we're separate and disconnected when it's actually the opposite.
Wow, yeah. I think it can always seem as if we've never done enough, no matter how much we do in a day. That's something I hear from my clients all the time. You might have done 100 things, but it's not enough. And it's, always pushing. So it's a question for anyone to answer. Do you think we're afraid about underachieving or failing? And that's where our preoccupation with busyness is coming from. And why do we think this is?
I can share a view on this. In that I don't know if anyone's heard of this book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. If you're nodding, I talk about it a lot. This is a real breakthrough book for me. So he, in that book, I highly, highly recommend, by the way. It's a little bit dated in terms of like some of the anecdotes, like I was playing golf with this guy from IBM, or like, get to the point, like, what's happening? But he talks about one of the principles of the Big Leap is that it's not that we're afraid of failure, but we are uncomfortable and afraid of success, and actually our capacity for happiness and success and our thermostat almost for it is so limited that if we get close to it, we can almost start to malfunction. So it probably, and this is just an opinion, but I think it's a bit of both, because we're brought up to kind of like do your best and you mustn't fail, and we have a complicated relationship with failure. But then I know certainly when I've had some of my biggest stretchy / creaking moments, it's been when, oh my God, this is happening, this is working out. What am I going to do? And that's sometimes where I can go into self-sabotage or start to go towards burnout as a like sophisticated form of self-sabotage.
And sometimes I think that we're just born that way, like we're just born into a world where we just have negative belief systems. You know, I'm not good enough, I haven't done enough, I just, you know, sometimes I think that's innate. You know, by default we often think negatively rather than positively, so I often think that maybe we're just born that way, that's why we're like that.
Or we learn it from our parents.
Yeah, or, yeah.
I blame mum and dad for everything. Anyone else want to comment on this? So we'll go to the next question. So Samantha, this one is for you. We mentioned stats at the beginning of the conversation about losing work days to stress and anxiety. What do you advise companies to do in order to help employees?
It's a tricky one with companies, because I think they have been focused so long on the end result of what happens. Okay, let's just sign them off sick, or let's think about how we engage them when they come back to work. But there's no preventative measures. Like, what is this actual structure and the system that we've created doing to the individual on a daily basis? And so I sit down with leaders and HR and just say, look, what are you creating here? What is the environment and the culture? And is it supporting and nurturing people, or are they feeling like they're coming in here and it's a treadmill? And are you actually speaking to your staff about how they feel on a daily basis? Does a leader know how much sleep their team is getting? You know, are they checking in? And I think it starts with having better conversations around how we're feeling, how where work is playing in the balance of our lives, and whether or not we're feeling overstretched, and what we do about that. And I think a lot of companies are still very stuck in the mindset of, well, we give them a bit of yoga and we do this on a Friday. And I'm like, holistically, how do you bring this all together? Yes, there might be yoga available and there might be unlimited holidays, but you're not allowing people to take any of that, or the time or the space to show up and think about, you know, what's affecting them differently. So it is about engaging them in a different conversation, engaging them with more preventative measures, and getting them to think holistically across what I call my 4 happiness pillars. So head and heart, how is the person functioning on a psychological level at work? How do they feel in their self-esteem, their confidence? Thinking about the digital and mindful balance, you know, how much is tech kind of changing and shaping the workplace? Thinking about work and life. And then communication and connection, which is a big issue. And I think that until we sort out how to communicate and connect better at work, we're always going to be struggling with this kind of burnout cycle.
Wow. Yeah, I really hope things change in workplaces, because work is such a source of stress, and it can seem as if people are just getting squeezed more and more and expected to work more for less money. And yeah, I really hope things are starting to change. So this question is for Lucy, and also for anyone else who wants to pipe in on this. When FOMO comes knocking, how do we deal with constant social media updates? It's a problem for me as well. So.
I think I might borrow one of Samantha's words here, which is preventative. So, for example, I posted about this week, in that I could kind of sense it coming, but I'm already starting to see on social media things like, departure lounge check-ins, and those, what do you call, like, hot dog legs, like on a Sunday, like, oh, here we are, Susan, oh, have a great time, Susan. It's already starting to happen, isn't it? So I've already put a few friends on mute, because I'm not sure when I'll get away this summer, if indeed I will, just because of a few of the commitments, and that's cool, but I also know that it will trigger my FOMO, because I know myself really, really well at this point. So I think prevention, it can be in place, but I also think that there's an element of, instead of kind of getting into what can be, so I'll speak for myself, getting into what can be an easy habit of feeling a bit jealous, a bit envious and a bit sorry for myself is kind of setting myself up for the opposite of that. And my friend Corinne, who's a coach, taught me this amazing tip, which is good for you. What is it? Yeah, good for you and the same for me. Good for you and the same for me. So now whenever I see something that might kind of trigger my comparison, I immediately say good for you and the same for me. Because what it does, my system can't be jealous and supportive of someone and myself at the same time. It just can't do it. So thankfully, those kind of positive receptors, I'm just making this up, but you know what I mean, you get my drift. Those positive receptors also, because the power of the words and the power of the affirmation, the power of the energy of actually no, it's all right, will override the comparison and override that feeling of FOMO. So good for you and the same for me. And if you can, even if it feels a bit weird, I would actually say it out loud and use the physical, because it'll change your state. And then the FOMO, it just cuts off the oxygen to FOMO like that. Quite simple, it'll take a bit of practice, but you'll notice it'll start to dissolve away more and more and more.
Oh, that's so good. I started deleting Instagram every day. I reinstall it. I do my half an hour videos, answering messages, and then I turn it off because I now have an extra 3 hours a day to relax.
Do you know what? I do the
What's
same.
that like?
Yeah. My approach is a little bit more aggressive. I unfollow people I don't want to follow anymore. I don't click on the search button, especially at night. It's like the most dangerous, toxic button. I definitely go on social media detoxes. I turn off all my notifications, and really recently, I just take it with a pinch of salt. Because you have a love-hate relationship with Instagram, don't you? And I'm just like, do you know what? I love it and I hate it. And from now on, I'm just going to take it with a pinch of salt. So those are my kind of tips for dealing with it.
Sounds good, sounds good. Danielle, you're obviously going to run a mini pause retreat workshop later. But can you give us some practical tips on how to pause, but also how we can overcome those feelings of feeling like we're lazy if we're resting? Does anyone feel like that? Like, you feel like you have to also be on your phone when you're watching TV. You can't be just watching a movie. How can we do that and not feel selfish and lazy?
Yeah, with practice, I think is the answer to that. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily something that's a simple answer to that question. But in my own experience, the more that you can start to build what I call micro pauses into your day, then the more that your system gets attuned to what it feels like to pause in your day. And then the more that you feel that benefit, then the more that you kind of want to keep repeating the cycle. So it's a bit like you were saying with the sort of positive affirmations. So I like to try and connect pause to different times of the day and different activities that you're already doing. So breakfast is a really good one. Have your breakfast, please. If you're not having your breakfast, it is a really lovely moment to pause. An opportunity. It doesn't need to take a long time, but it is a sacred space in your day where you can just have a moment for yourself. It might be as simple as you light your incense before breakfast, so that you kind of have that moment of ritual where you begin to think about, okay, this is my time, this is my place for me to connect. I love to make matcha tea in the morning. I love the morning zone. I like to make matcha tea. It doesn't take long, it takes a couple of minutes to make my matcha tea, but it's an absolute ritual, a moment for me to pause. At work, please take your lunch. If you're kind of zooming through your day, please take your lunch break. Even if if it's shrunk down a little bit, take your lunch away from your desk. Get outside if you can. Yeah, we're not meant to live in these square boxes and work in these square boxes. We're meant to be fed by daylight and to feel the breeze on our skin. Like we're of the land, so reconnecting to nature in small ways. Simple things like this might sound a bit strange, but like water plants. Like it's a real moment to just pause, to be able to take just a little bit of time for yourself. For those of you who are mothers, who has children here? Anybody? Okay, lots of you, yeah. So one of the things that I had to do to be able to shift this was really about a mindset shift for me. Previously, I'd put everybody ahead of myself, and that's essentially how I'd been living, was that it was everybody else first. Now, if you're a mother, I think that's exacerbated often, isn't it, with the children. But what I was taught, which was really helpful, it's from a psychologist in the 70s called Winnicott, and he said that in a healthy family dynamic, the mother's needs are taken care of first. So in a healthy family dynamic, the mother's needs are taken care of first. And that reset my thinking, really, in terms of, okay, so if I'm essentially, I don't have children, but if I'm essentially mothering other people, like, how do I take care of my needs first? And it was a massive mindset shift for me, because I realised I had to put myself at the centre of my world. In fact, I had it written for a year in the front of my diary, put myself, I'm a bit old school, I've got a paper diary, but I had it written in my diary, put yourself at the centre of your world, because it was such a massive reframe and a massive rethink on how I'd been living, and that eventually, over time, enabled me to take care of myself first.
I love that. That gives me hope when I have children, because I do have worries that I will burn out, but that sounds amazing. Samantha, how do you go about changing the culture and our pace of work? How can we speak to our bosses or the HR if we're struggling or want more support?
And I think it's really important that we do actually try and take some proactive measures at work. And a couple of things I encourage people to do is really sit with yourself and think, okay, where am I struggling a little bit at work? Is it the fact that I feel either overwhelmed with what I'm doing and we're not connecting well with my co-workers? Do I feel like the environment itself isn't supporting me? And reach out to your line manager, maybe somebody in a different team that you've been speaking to, and just say, I'm struggling a little bit and I think I need some help. It might not always be HR that you can go to straight away, because sometimes some of them are a little bit oblivious to what's happening on the floor and they have their own pressures from above. So I think seek out somebody that you can talk to. I also think it's important that if whatever team you're on, you galvanise as a team and think, what can we do together to support each other? Because I think it's really important, if you are all working towards a goal, how do we look out for each other? Hey, I noticed you look really tired, what's going on? Ask each other, are you okay? And I think if we start to pay attention to each other just a little bit, notice when somebody's looking a little bit under the weather, or is flustered, or is worried, or isn't speaking up in a meeting and they used to be always full of great ideas, reach out to that person. And I think it's, a lot of my work is not only working with the company heads, but also from the ground up, thinking with the individuals, like, how can I give you more of a voice to articulate what you're feeling? And I think if we take the time to pause and to self-reflect, we are able to articulate what's really going on with us, versus being like, I feel stressed, but stress from what? Where is it coming from? Once you know what it is, then you can target it and try and make a change that way.
I think it's so important to just have more of those conversations and ask people, are you okay? And ask them again, are you really okay? Or how are you really? Because quite often...
And also, it's not a case of, sometimes we want to help people in the way that we want to receive help. And sometimes it's just being a listening here. I'm here if you need me. I don't know what you might need, but if you want to reach out, I'm around. That's it. Just offering that safe space to allow someone to come forth.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. So finally, can we get a tip from everyone about how we can incorporate a pause into our daily routines that we can all kind of follow and use ourselves? So do you want to start?
Yeah, I think when I was really ill, I had to set alarms on my phone to remind myself to eat, take some supplements, and meditate. So my most memorable moments were like 11 o'clock in the morning when my alarm would go off, and I would literally just take time out, take 10, just breathe, do my meditation, eat a snack, take my supplements, and just kind of intentionally remind myself that I will get better and it's not doom and gloom, the end of the world. So yeah, setting an alarm mid-morning.
Yeah, great tip. Mine is to breathe. So when we did the meditation this morning, I started by guiding you through 3 conscious breaths. So that's the breath that goes in through the nose, down into the tummy and out through the mouth. You can do this at any time. You don't have to be meditating to breathe. In fact, breathing's happening naturally. But to breathe consciously will help to just settle your system if you're feeling stressed or anxious. So yeah, my tip is those 3 conscious breaths that we were doing this morning.
Thank you.
And this is perhaps more of a self-soothing one, but I try and do this on my good days as well, just to kind of reinforce it, because I'm a company of one, so I have to self-resource a lot of things. But something that I found that works, especially before a big meeting or when I'm feeling like stretchy to creaky, is I'll find a quiet place, and hopefully it's like my home office, but if not, I'll literally go to wherever the buildings go to the loo, and I'll put my right hand on my heart, and I'll put my 2 digits on my pulse, and I will rub my heart and feel my pulse, because it really gets me really connected into my body. And I'll say something like, "You're all right, kid," or "This is going to be okay. Be open, listen," and I'll just give my that big sister part of me just really come forth and lead in that moment. And what I find is it just kind of dissolves any of that nervous adrenaline, or certainly brings it down a touch, and that's all it might need, is just to bring it down a touch, so I'm not fizzing anymore. And so that works if I'm feeling a bit stressed, but when it's like maybe a good day, I might do the same thing, saying, "Hey, well done," because if I don't say it to myself, maybe it won't get said. And I just find that that can be really restoring, and could just be like that kind of hug in a mug if you are feeling really, really stretched too.
Beautiful.
So one thing that I like to do throughout the day is just do a little mini body scan meditation, and that is just channeling your breath as it comes in. Just think of that breath coming in as energizing and really cleansing, and as you release on your out breath, you're letting go of any stress or tension. And just close your eyes. You could do it for 5 minutes at your desk, and just see that breath as a colour. Visualize that colour, and visualize it going all the way from inside your mouth, all the way down to your feet, and all the way back up through your body and out. And just being aware of if there's any tension in your body, like where is any pain, any tension sitting, and try and release that on your out breath. And it just kind of gives you that nice settling feeling, and also brings more awareness into your body. I think when we're so busy, it's easy for us to be in our heads all the time, but just to actually think, what's going on with my body, and where am I carrying stress? Where is it manifesting?
Amazing. And I'll add my tip as well, which is make peace of mind your priority. And this is what really helped me a few years ago when I was recovering from a lot of anxiety, and I just decided that taking care of myself had to be the most important thing for a while, because I wasn't going to be good for anyone or anything if I was so anxious that I couldn't leave the house, or I was having panic attacks every time I spoke to someone. So just making it more of a priority, and knowing that it's not selfish to do that, it actually enriches every area of your life and your work. So does anyone have any questions? We've got about 7 minutes for questions. Anyone want to ask anything to the panel? Who's going to be the brave first person to?
Thank you very much, that was really good. So if you're the sort of person who does a lot and is there for people and is at risk of burnout therefore, and you decide, okay, I'm going to have a bit of a change and try to prioritise myself more, I think one of the things that would make me anxious is the idea that other people would then judge me as selfish or not there for them, or they might need me. Do you recommend kind of having a chat with your close friends and family and saying, like, this is what I'm going to do, just so you know? Or how do you kind of deal with that change, would you recommend?
Well, yeah, you need a support network around you, and if they're going to raise eyebrows, then are they really your friends?
Well, that's true, but
yeah, no, but you're absolutely right. Definitely have a conversation with them and tell them, look, I'm feeling a bit burnt out, feeling a bit frazzled, I'm going to make some changes. Are you going to be there to hold my hand and support me? I think that, if you're feeling burnt out and knackered and exhausted, you probably won't recover unless you've got a strong support network around you. So yeah, that's definitely important to talk about.
Yeah, my big piece of advice is that you cannot serve from an empty well. And there is nothing about overgiving and overfunctioning for other people if you are depleted at the end of it. So you have to just be able to educate. We teach others how we want to be treated. So if you can vocalize, actually, I need a bit of space, and I can't be there for you right now because I need to look after myself, it's fine. And those who will be there for you will be there, and then if they're not, then that's cool. They are quite happy to continue leeching and not giving back. So it's important that you do push back and you look after yourself first before you go out and continue to nourish others.
think as well, sorry, not to kind of promote like be nice, I don't mean that sort of tone everything. If you kind of say, I'm not going to be, you might notice I'm a bit slow to reply to stuff, or I'm not going to be able to go to that, but I might see the next one. And if they say what's up, say just like trying to restore, I've got loads going on. And it's not like you're asking permission, it's like you can shut it down a little bit. The fact you are thinking about other people shows how caring you are, so it's like turning that on for yourself a little bit. I think it's important because you've got it to give, so give it to yourself almost. But I'd also share with you, just to kind of manage expectations and just put yourself in your own zorb. I've got an out of office on all the time. On my personal emails, the one that I've forgotten about, and 2 business email addresses. And it basically says, if you're reading this, like, thank you, I give a shit. I work irregular hours, I've got this deadline on, so I'm going to ask you to bear with me. If you're a client, ignore this message. If you want this, go to Instagram. If you're doing this, it'll be 3 days minimum. If it's urgent, reply again. And full stop, is it really urgent? Thanks very much, I'm a company of one, like LOL Lucy. And I know that kind of sounds a little bit like, whoa, but it's like not my job to be good at emails. It's my job to like build my business, be a good wife, be a good dog mum, be a good sister and a daughter, and do the things I'm supposed to do. And that's not because I'm so important I couldn't possibly answer an email. It's just that I'm not going to pay someone £1,000 a month to answer my emails because I've got to like feed my family, but I'm not going to be able to keep up with them as well. So it's going to be imperfect. And that kind of like just manages people's expectations, which is like, I'm really trying my best here, but if you're asking me for something I can't deliver, or I just can't, you may not hear back from me. And I think that's important. That might be more of a professional thing, but I know certainly when it's been like, oh God, the Hindu emails, like 85,000 people, I'm like, can you WhatsApp me what I owe you with your bank details? Thank you, good day.
Just to build on that, I think we have to put our own boundaries in place. If we don't put our own boundaries in place, other people will just keep taking from us. So somebody called me the other day and he said, oh, I thought that would go to voicemail. And I said, no, I don't have voicemail. Like, I just don't use it. Facebook Messenger, no, thanks. I know it's a bit old-fashioned, but I'm just like, I have to put my own boundaries in. If you want to communicate with me, come through this channel or this channel. And that was one of my big lessons from burnout. Like, if I don't put my boundaries in place, nobody else is going to. So take care of yourself, everybody else will be fine.
And maybe communication is the key. I just think, because I can imagine I might feel if someone suddenly changes but they don't tell me, I'd be like, well, you're being rude or whatever. But sharing, people like you to share, they like to be part of your journey, whether that's good or bad. And so I think if you share that, look, I'm just going through this at the moment.
I don't think you even need to.
But yeah,
it's not essential.
Yeah.
People will deal with things in their own way and you'll be fine. I think sometimes it's our minds that think that there's an issue when there isn't one. So you have to do what's best for you.
And I think that life still goes on. If you're not there for that person, they're not going to like hate you forever. It'll soon move on. And one of my favourite quotes is, "It's not your job to be everything to everyone." That's one of my favourites.
Great. Anyone else got one more question? Or one or two?
I think this hand will have. Yeah. Should we just hand the mic down?
Okay, so I have a question regarding, for example, if you feel a bit like down or depressed and you're a bit far from home. So if, for example, you are dependent a lot on your close friends, like how are you supposed to be dependent on people, or are you supposed to have help, help from your close people, or just keep it to yourself and try to figure it out on your own? Because at the end of the day, like, when you grow up, you have to depend on yourself.
I can answer that from a point of view of being an expat in Singapore for a number of years, and I found that my friends, even though I had a really tough time at that point, my friends were essential, and that without that group of people it would have been a lot worse. So yes, as we grow up, we are meant to be independent, but I think as human beings we're interdependent, so we want to connect with other human beings. We have a desire to belong, a desire to feel love, a desire to connect, and without those very basic needs being met, then we can quickly kind of lose ourselves. So if you're away from home, then your network of friends becomes your family. They might, in some cases, be better than your family, and so make the most of them. And then if you feel that you're still struggling, then have some professional help as well. And there are a lot of amazing people around who can be a listening ear and support you through those times when you're not in your natural home environment.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think, loneliness is such a big issue, and it's really linked to anxiety and depression, because you don't want to go out when you're anxious and depressed. But I started going to women's circles. Has anyone ever been to a women's circle before? It's amazing. You sit in a circle and you just have deep conversations with strangers, and everyone cries. But it's amazing because you have these like deep connections with people. You get to talk about real stuff. It's not small talk. Go to Meetup or Eventbrite and you'll find women's circles local to you. They're all over the world. It's a bit scary to go, but it's really like a powerful experience. I recommend that.
Rachel and I both run women's circles.
Amazing.
We're not scary. So you may cry.
Do we have one more question here?
I'd love some tips on overthinking. I think most of my stress and anxieties and probably comes into comparison, it's overthinking.
Yeah.
So, for example, if everybody on a WhatsApp group is talking and I haven't spoken in a couple of days and they're going to view me differently, and there's, basically most of the things I do, I overthink. And I'd love some advice on that, please.
Yeah, meditation. It won't be easy to start with if you've got a very busy mind, but taking to begin with small amounts of time, maybe 5 minutes a day, and then building that up to a little bit longer over time, it's going to be like a real soothing balm for you eventually. I can't promise it'll be easy to start with. If you're doing it already, great, keep going. But if you don't meditate, then perhaps an app like Calm or Headspace or Insight Timer will be helpful.
Yeah, I do little bits, but I
Yeah.
kind of, my enemy when I go into it, I do it for a few weeks and then out, and I just need to kind of
Hold
into
the
healthy
practice.
habits.
Yeah, hold the practice. So connect it to a specific time of day.
Yeah.
Make it the same time every day, and then stay in that seat even if you can't meditate on that day. Just turn up in the seat. Yeah, do that for yourself. It will really help.
And have more fun. Having more fun, booking tickets, getting out of town, it just puts your life into perspective and completely interrupts all that overthinking. Because when you're having fun, then your happy thoughts are entering, right?
I always choose a word of the year in January, but you can do it any time. Whenever a client comes to work with me one-on-one, if it's June or October, I'll say, okay, what's your word of the next 12 months? What's this compass word, this word or phrase? You're just going to embody and sum up how you want to feel, what you want to bring into your life. So my word this year is savour. So whenever I'm feeling all discombobulated or I'm having fast thoughts, I can go to that and think, what's one thing I can do or be which can allow me to align with that. So imagine if your word here was like focus or consolidate or joy or growth. It's really, if you can kind of switch to a question of self-inquiry, not judgment, just observation, it kind of again cuts off the oxygen to any of those fast thoughts, because it means like, oh, this brings me right back to me. And I can put my phone away, or I can use my phone and take action on that. But ultimately, it just slows the thoughts down and brings you back to yourself, really. I find that helps a lot, and to the point where, reminders are golden too. You're smart, you're intelligent, and you've got this, but you're going to need a bit of a reminder as well, because we are learning to put ourselves even up the list, not even at the top of it. So if you have to put a reminder on your phone, I'll say, my phone, how will I savour today, or how will I savour this moment? It will just start to shift things along.
I was just going to say, you alluded to kind of not adding anything in the WhatsApp group. I think you just got to ask yourself, is this adding value or is it taking away from me? And so if you haven't got anything to say, you have nothing to say, it's fine. And just be at peace with that. And if you have a very active mind, one thing that helps me is just brain dump. Before bed, just write it all out, everything that's concerned you for the day, close it, and then just put it down and wind down into bed. And just kind of let go of those things that, it really doesn't matter.
So not to-do list, I did that.
Just brain, all the things that were, oh my god, I didn't write in the WhatsApp group, I didn't do this today, this, that, the other, just let it go.
Okay.
Let it go, breathe it out, and just kind of try and move on from there. Because otherwise if you carry it, it will sit with you, and even when you do sometimes meditate, that stuff will just come up again as well. So if you brain dump it, let it go, then hopefully, and meditate as well, hopefully you'll get more clarity.
Yeah, just to add to that quickly, overthinking is often a distraction from feeling. We don't want to feel stuff, so our mind goes into overdrive and then we don't have to feel. So I wonder what is actually at the root of that overthinking and what you're not feeling. So I think we're out of time. Thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of the morning.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you to Chloe for hosting, and thank you all. I think we could talk about it all day long, but sadly we can't. So you are all going to be moving on to some mini workshops. You might have spotted you've all got different colours on your name badges. So I'll quickly tell you where you're going to be. So people with a blue badge, you're going to be staying in this room here with Danielle to do the instant pause. People with the green badge are going to be moving through, and that's going to be where our sound healing session is going to be through there on the beautiful sofas. And then the yellows are going to come with me. So if we want to just meet over by the door, we're going to head down to the amazing kitchen, which is downstairs, to do a cookery workshop as well. Thank you.